screen that says Beth attacks Carl. We want the player to feel as though they're interacting with things that are happening in this space. Or if you get attacked, right, you should definitely know about it. So the pub sub pattern is a great one, and as we explore more in our rendering engine, it's definitely one we're going to have to come back to. It might be the next one we do. Pub sub. So, to the Canadian's point, absolutely imperative in almost any game there to be something to make sense of the events that are happening, and to ensure that everyone who's inside of this world has a consistent and concurrent understanding what's happening in that world. So, not a problem that is exclusive to gaming, but again, games do give you the opportunity to see almost every possible design pattern, and often in the simplest of games. Okay, so I'm checking stamina. I'm checking out the base actor, which means that if I want something about stamina to interfere or affect the behavior of an actor, I need to do it here. So now, because this is a base game object, it's also type iCommand, which is why we see this very familiar, or should be very familiar, execute method. It takes in a request and returns back a game response. So, in the same way in the hive mind, I'm doing a check here. I'm saying, in my execute command here, I'm saying, hey, if they're out of play, then send the out of play response. I'm going to do the exact same kind of thing in my base actor, which, as another point, when you're doing these design patterns and you're making these abstractions and these refined abstractions, right? So our abstraction for the command pattern is iCommand. Our refined abstraction is hive mind and base actor, right? So in this case, hive mind is also the implementation, but for base actor it's not, right? So player and monster are our concrete implementations of base actor, but based off of, because of how we designed it, because we're using the design patterns, if we're in hive mind or base actor, we find ourselves doing very similar things, which is good. It ends up adding consistency to your code. So anyone who's coming to make a change, once they've seen a little bit of your code, they should start seeing the same things repeated throughout. Which can be bad if it's a problem, right? If they say one problem, you're like, well, it's probably in a bunch of places. But as far as your personal software process, you can fix that one thing and it strengthens your coding across the board. So consistency and traceability is really important. Okay, so I'm doing these kind of pre-checks here. So I want to say, very similarly, I'm going to say private bool is exhausted. I'm going to say return this dot stamina is less than or equal to 0. And I can immediately use this call to replace this bit. So, and again, like I said before, even the most simple or straightforward algorithm is still an algorithm. So we just saw how we took this algorithm and made it a little stronger, a little more resilient. And I can do the same thing with private bool is alive. I can do return this dot hit points is greater than 0. And I can replace this guy. And say if they're not alive, then do set their state out of play and make them dead. So I love flags, I love checks like this, and we should start to see the benefit of that almost right away. and the perceived benefit, though, is if I ever change what is alive means, or if I want to make that check more refined, I'm doing it in one place. And then everything that feeds off of that gets updated automatically. Okay. So, we shouldn't have to check if the player is alive or dead because the hive mind should be doing that for us. If it gets to execute, we have to trust, you don't have to, but you should trust the hive mind as a gatekeeper has done its job. That it wouldn't request something of you if you were dead. But we do want to check are the things the hive mind can account for. In this case is whether or not you're exhausted. So if is exhausted, then we want to return something. Look at this, we've got disabled here as well. We threw this in kind of like a laugh last time, but let's go ahead and make another little bool for it. Another little bool. Because these are things that are going to stop us. Like just stop us cold from being able to perform an action. So we return this actor state is equal to actor states disabled. And we can immediately use that guy there. So if you are exhausted or disabled, let's go ahead and take this out. This is our disabled check for fight. But we want to short circuit this so that it never actually gets to fight if they're dead or disabled. So let's do a private game response. It's very uncreative, but and so I want to do struggle to move for one. What else is for the other? So just to be alright. So we don't need to do the checked anymore for is disabled. So we Control Shift D to format. So we do want to do can't respond. Okay. So now we're doing a check here that says if they're exhausted or disabled, return cannot respond. Alright, so just in the versionary case, we just say that blank begins to move and then collapses. So if the person's been disabled or exhausted, they'll get can't respond, which will prevent them from ever getting into our actual logic. You see here, we still got quite a bit to do as far as interpreting what repair actually means. Let's go ahead and trim this up now. And again, we refined this once, I believe. We refactored this, but as you can see, whenever we have these kind of red flags of optimization, which is why people will always tell you that pre-optimization is the root of all evil, because you can always refine. We refactored this once, and then as we're putting more clay into it, we're seeing a new pattern emerge. So a new point to refactor. So I think this is why the whole watch people code movement is so good, because often you'll run into someone's code and you'll only have the benefit of seeing their code when it's refactored, umpteenth times. So it looks very concise, looks very just smart. You're like, how did you write this? Like, how did you? There's such a complicated link statement, such a complicated series of chain calls. You must be a genius. And I guarantee you that's not the way it worked. I guarantee you the way it worked was they started off with something that looked hideous. They refined it once. They came back a week later. They refined it again, and it just naturally evolved into this thing. So if you aren't a Stanford grad or whatever have you, a young Bill Gates, and you can't write extremely complicated algorithms the first time through, you are not the exception. You are the rule. Dr. Arrow says, did you go to school for programming? I did ish. Like ish, right? I've taken classes, and I took classes in programming after I started learning how to program. And my first job in IT was on the network operations side of things. So, grew up with computers, got my MCSC, went out into the world, got a job, and started doing some network stuff. And then started taking a liking to programming. So I started teaching myself programming, and then, I got better and better at it. I started doing some open source PHP stuff, and then I jumped over to C#. Sorry, it's hard to talk and then also hear at the same time, but I'm learning how to do it. Okay, so let's grab this guy. So we haven't really seen what repair means in the game, but the concept is you're going to be in this town. That's and it's very kind of classic zombie. People barricade themselves in this town, and then every day you've got problems to solve, whether it's fight a zombie, repair a wall, or whatever have you. So this already looks super similar, right? And this is just a great part about refactoring, because you can look at this and like, I don't need to solve this now. If I threw a bunch of weight into making this more concise, it wouldn't make it any faster. So I'm going to leave it alone, and I'll come back to it at some other date. Which, if I've got a piece of advice for all professions, give yourself some easy wins. You know what I mean? Give yourself a day in the office where you've just stacked it with problems you know how to solve. negotiating is kind of interesting.